They came to take our species. We swore to send them to hell. Russell Griffin gritted his teeth, sweat dripping down his brow, as he frantically worked the controls of his crippled patrol ship. Acrid smoke filled the cockpit, and warning lights flashed. His sensors had just detected the massive alien craft appearing out of hyperspace, before it opened fire without warning. The unknown vessel's powerful weapons had torn through his shields in seconds. He barely managed to make the emergency jump to human space. Staggering from his damaged fighter onto the hangar deck, Russell knew his dire news could not wait. He rushed to report to his superiors, bursting into the command center. Admiral Jackson's eyes widened as Russell recounted the unprecedented attack near the edges of explored space. The enemy ship had borne the markings of the Saurian race, not seen for centuries. Now they had returned, hostile and seemingly bent on humanity's destruction. Reports flooded in of devastating strikes against human worlds and colonies, each more brutal than the last. The Saurians attacked without mercy, rounding up entire planetary populations. They wielded strange, immobilizing weapons and stasis fields, leaving no human casualties, only thousands of captives. Jackson grimly tasked Russell and a team of specialists with a desperate mission: find out why the Saurians were attacking and locate their base of operations. The survival of the human race depended on it. As Russell raced to uncover the truth, the aliens' onslaught only intensified. Entire human colonies fell, their citizens dragged away to an unknown fate worse than death. The Saurians took no prisoners and left no corpses. Rumors swirled of the brilliant and sadistic Saurian commander Raxa, feared to be an implacable enemy of humankind. Grim theories circulated: experimentation, genetic harvesting, enslavement, forced breeding. The horrific possibilities for the alien abductees seemed endless. Humanity girded itself for total war against the merciless invaders. The future of their species, their very right to live free, was at stake. This was not just a battle for survival, but a fight for their fundamental existence. Russell understood the terrible burden upon him and his team. Find the Saurians' weakness, discover a way to defeat them. If he failed in his mission, mankind was doomed. Every human would be captured, subjugated, tortured, transformed into something unrecognizable. He would not let that happen. He would fight to his last breath, they all would. The Saurians wanted to seize their people, their worlds, their freedom. Humanity would make them pay in blood and fire. If the aliens sought to conquer them, the humans would teach them the true meaning of hell. Russell strode into the command center, his battered flight suit still stained with sweat and smoke. Admiral Jackson and the assembled Joint Chiefs snapped to attention as he recounted the devastating attack. "Their weapons cut through our shields like they weren't even there," Russell said, his voice tight. "The Saurians have technology we've never seen before, and they're not just out for blood. They're rounding up prisoners by the thousands." Admiral Jackson leaned forward, his weathered face grim. "Our intel confirms it. The Saurians are massing a huge invasion force along our border. Troop transports, assault ships, God knows what else. They're coming for us." "We need to strike back hard and fast," Russell argued. "Hit them before they hit us. I volunteer to lead a special ops mission behind their lines. We go in quiet, gather intel on their numbers and tech, and find out where they're coming from." Jackson nodded. "Agreed. Commander Griffin, assemble your team. I'm giving you carte blanche. Whatever you need, you've got it. This mission is designated top priority." Russell saluted. "Yes, sir, I've already got some people in mind. Mick Donovan from engineering, Dr. Evan Schuyler from xenobiology, and a platoon of Space Marine Pathfinders, the best of the best." As Russell's strike team assembled, the Saurians threw their full might against the human defenses. Reports poured in of enemy breakthroughs, smashed garrisons, entire colonies falling before the onslaught. The human forces fought with skill and valor, but they were outmatched and driven back. Deep behind the front lines, Russell's force made their final preparations. Engineers swarmed over their ships, fitting them with the latest in stealth technology and electronic countermeasures. Armorers wheeled out crates of advanced weaponry, much of it reverse-engineered from captured Saurian tech. In the simulators and training grounds, Russell drilled his troops relentlessly. They ran endless zero-G combat exercises, practiced ship-to-ship boarding tactics, and crammed in xenolinguistics courses to understand Saurian comms chatter. There could be no mistakes. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. As the Saurian blitzkrieg smashed through the last lines of defense, Russell's team slipped through the cracks. Masked by the chaos of the invasion, they infiltrated past enemy patrols and listening posts. They flew dark and silent, running on minimal power to avoid detection. Entering the orbit of a burning human world, they coasted past swarming Saurian ships. Below, a horrific sight unfolded. Vast landing zones disgorged armies of Saurian warriors, towering assault walkers, swarms of hideous war beasts. Harvesters and prison barges hovered over the ruins of human cities, dragging away screaming captives by the millions. It was now or never. Russell led the infiltration team as they soared in on grav chutes, sprinting through the smoke and confusion. They stormed into a grounded Saurian command ship, cutting down the guards in vicious close combat. Mick and his hackers ripped through the enemy computers, stealing terabytes of intel. That's when Russell saw them, the manifests, the inventories, the cold clinical proof of the aliens' plan, endless requisitions for human captives, cloning vats, breeding chambers, a monstrous eugenics program to create a perverted hybrid army. As razor claws tore into human armor and energy blades flashed, Evan Schuyler shoved Russell towards the ladder. He screamed at them to go as he emptied his weapon into the charging Saurians, buying them a few precious seconds to escape. Russell watched in agony as his friend disappeared beneath a wave of serpentine bodies, a defiant war cry on his lips. The survivors barely made it back, shaken and bloodied. In the briefing room, Russell slammed his armored fist onto the table. He told them the Saurians' plan, the unthinkable fate to which they had condemned humanity, to be twisted into monstrous slaves, to be devoured by their own mutated offspring. But he had a plan, a last risky move. The star charts pointed to a distant system in uncharted space, the probable site of the Saurian homeworld, the nexus of their power. "We need to hit them now," Russell said, his eyes blazing. "Throw everything we've got at their home base, smash it to rubble before they can unleash their abominations. It's our only shot." Admiral Jackson frowned. "It could be a trap. Some of the staff think they're trying to lure out our fleet." Russell slammed his hand down again. "It's a chance we have to take. If we wait, if we hesitate, then we're already dead. We do this now and we do it hard. We show them what it means to screw with the human race." He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. "This isn't just our only chance, Admiral. It's our last hope. For every man, woman, and child out there. We're going to take the fight to the Saurian homeworld, and we're going to burn it down around them. For Earth, for humanity, for every soul they stole from us." Russell felt a surge of grim satisfaction as he surveyed the assembled fleet. Sleek Nemesis-class battlecruisers bristled with weaponry, their newly installed Hellbore siege cannons glowing with barely contained energy. This was humanity's last, best hope. "All units prepare for hyperspace jump," Russell ordered. "Next stop, Saurian space." The jump lasted mere moments. As they emerged, Russell's breath caught in his throat. Before them loomed a nightmarish alien world, Sauria Prime. "Stealth systems engaged," his XO reported. "We're slipping past their outer defenses." Russell nodded tersely. "Take us in, prep the drop pods." As they breached the atmosphere, the full horror of Sauria Prime revealed itself. Vast alien jungles writhed beneath them, dotted with sprawling hive cities that pulsed with sickly bioluminescence. In the distance, cyclopean structures reached skyward, cloning facilities to fuel the Saurians' vile plans. The drop pod screamed towards the surface. Russell's stomach lurched as his pod slammed into the ground. He kicked the hatch open, plasma rifle at the ready. They fought their way through twisting corridors of living tissue, the walls themselves seeming to pulse and breathe. The stench of chemicals and decay was overwhelming. Russell charged forward, then stopped dead in his tracks. The cavernous space before him was filled with row upon row of massive tubes. Inside each one floated a human form, or what had once been human. "My God," someone whispered. Suddenly alarms blared. Saurian warriors poured into the chamber, screeching war cries, and from the far end, nightmarish shapes emerged, human Saurian hybrids, their bodies twisted and malformed. "Open fire," Russell roared. The chamber erupted into chaos. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as the three-way melee raged. Russell ducked and weaved, his rifle spitting death. Through the pandemonium, he spotted a heavily fortified door. The data vault, he realized. "Cover me." He sprinted forward, dodging claws and energy blasts. Slapping a breaching charge on the door, he dove clear as it exploded inward. Inside was a treasure trove of alien tech. Russell jacked in his data spike, fingers flying over the interface. Come on," he muttered. A bone-chilling screech filled the air. A voice boomed from hidden speakers, cold, reptilian, dripping with malice. "Pitiful humans," it hissed. "Your capture is inevitable. Your genetic legacy will fuel our ascension." Russell recognized that voice, Raxa, the Saurian War Master himself. "Like hell it will," Russell snarled. "Mick, how much longer on that upload?" 5 minutes, sir, but we're getting swarmed." Russell gritted his teeth. They were out of time. He had to make a choice. That's when Admiral Jackson's frantic transmission came through. The fleet had arrived, but they needed those planetary defenses down now. "Mick, finish the upload," Russell ordered. "The rest of you, with me, we're taking out that defense citadel or die trying." He turned to his battered squad. "This is it, Marines, for Earth, for humanity, Ura." Russell hefted his rifle and charged towards the exit, towards near-certain death. But if it gave humanity a fighting chance, so be it. The war for the future of mankind would be decided here, on the hellish world of Sauria Prime, and Squadron Commander Russell Griffin intended to make the Saurians pay for every inch of ground in blood. Russell's mind raced as he surveyed the chaotic battlefield before him. The fate of humanity hung by a thread. He had to act fast. "Mick, take Johnson and Martinez. Get to that data vault and secure those breeding plans. It's our only shot at unraveling their whole sick operation." "I'm taking the rest of the squad to hit their orbital defense citadel. It's a long shot, but if we can bring it down, our fleet might have a fighting chance." Russell clasped his old friend's shoulder. "Maybe, but we're out of options. Now move out." The two teams split up, each sprinting toward their objectives. Mick and his small crew fought tooth and nail through the twisting corridors of the cloning facility. Saurian warriors lurched from every shadow, their inhuman shrieks echoing off the walls. "Contact left!" Johnson yelled, his rifle spitting fire. A horrific shape lumbered into view, some twisted hybrid of human and Saurian. Its misshapen limbs flailed as it charged. "What the hell is that thing?" Martinez gasped. Mick didn't waste time answering. His shotgun roared, blasting the abomination back. "Keep pushing, we're almost there." They burst into the central data core, a cavernous chamber filled with pulsing bioorganic computer banks. Mick slammed a data spike into the nearest port. Johnson and Martinez took up defensive positions as Saurian counterattacks slammed against their position. Plasma bolts sizzled past, scorching the walls. "How much longer?" Johnson shouted over the din of battle. Mick's fingers flew across the alien interface. "Almost got it. There, transmitting to the fleet now." Meanwhile, Russell led his Space Marines in a frontal assault on the orbital defense citadel. Waves of plasma fire washed over them as they charged across the exposed ground. They smashed through the outer defenses, only to find themselves surrounded by Raxa's dreaded Praetorian Guard. Sleek, biomechanical war beasts prowled at their flanks. "Form up," Russell ordered. "Back to back. We hold this position as long as we can." The Marines fought like demons, but one by one they fell to the overwhelming Saurian onslaught. Russell watched in anguish as his brothers-in-arms made their final stands. At last he stood alone amidst a sea of alien corpses. His armor was torn and smoking, his weapons depleted. That's when he saw him, Raxa himself striding forward, flanked by his remaining elite guards. The Saurian Warmaster's voice dripped with contempt. "Your pitiful resistance ends here, human. Even if you've stolen our data, it matters not. My warriors will crush your fleet and harvest your species to fuel our ascension." Raxor's mandibles clicked in what passed for a sneer. "But I am not without mercy. Kneel before me now, and I will grant you the honor of serving our hybrid empire." Raxor roared in fury. "Kill this insolent creature!" The Praetorians closed in. Russell braced himself for the killing blow. Suddenly the citadel shook violently. Massive explosions tore through the structure as a devastating orbital barrage hammered their position. The Saurian elites were vaporized in an instant. When the dust settled, Russell found himself face to face with a mortally wounded Raxa. The Warmaster stared at him in disbelief. "Impossible. You would sacrifice your entire fleet on such a gambit." Russell stood tall despite his injuries. "That's the difference between us, Lizard. We'll give everything to stay free. You'll never understand that." With a final roar of defiance, Raxa lunged at Russell. The human sidestepped and grabbed the alien's ornate blade, driving it deep into Raxa's chest. As fires raged around them, Russell staggered out of the crumbling citadel. He saw Mick's dropship swooping in for extraction. "I've got you, you crazy bastard," Mick said, hauling his friend aboard. They watched as the human fleet pressed its advantage, raining destruction on the Saurian hive cities below. But in the distance, vast swarms of enemy ships were rallying for one final, cataclysmic battle. The war for humanity's future had reached its endgame. The human fleet unleashed hell upon Sauria Prime. Massive hellbore cannons lit up the void, their searing beams carving molten furrows across the alien world's surface. Nuclear warheads detonated in blinding flashes, vaporizing entire hive cities in apocalyptic fireballs. Admiral Jackson's voice crackled over the comms, cold and unyielding. "Attention, Saurian forces. This is your final warning. Surrender unconditionally, or face total annihilation." The response came not in words, but in a swarm of biomechanical horrors erupting from the planet's shattered surface. At their head flew Supreme Commander Archilax, Raxa's heir, in a massive bio-dreadnought that pulsed with sickly light. Russell Griffin stood on the bridge of his flagship, surveying the oncoming alien tide with grim persistence. Mick Donovan manned the tactical station beside him, fingers flying over holographic displays. "All ships, battle formation Delta," Russell ordered. "Nemesis-class cruisers form up on our flanks. Carrier groups launch all fighters. This is it, people. We hold the line here." The two armadas collided in a maelstrom of destruction. Plasma bolts and energy beams crisscrossed the void. Saurian bioships slammed into human vessels, disgorging waves of chitinous horrors that tore through hull plating with razor-sharp claws. Russell's voice rang out over the fleet-wide channel. "All fighters, engage those boarding craft. Don't let them reach our capital ships." He watched the tactical display as swarms of human fighters strafed the alien assault ships, their guns spitting streams of superheated tungsten. But for every Saurian craft they destroyed, 2 more took its place. Alarms blared as alien boarders breached multiple human ships. Russell gritted his teeth. "Mick, status on those hellbore cannons?" The massive guns of the human fleet spoke as one, their beams converging on the bio-dreadnought. For a moment, it seemed to shrug off the assault. Then its organic hull ruptured in a blast of vaporized flesh and twisted metal. "Direct hit," Mick whooped. "Archilax's ship is crippled." Russell seized the moment. "All ships push forward. Bomber wings, new target, those shipyards in low orbit. Take them out." Human fighters and bombers dove toward Sauria Prime, weaving through curtains of alien flak. Russell watched from his command chair as explosions blossomed across the orbital facilities, destroying cloning tanks and half-formed bioships. Russell's eyes narrowed as he saw the ragtag Saurian fleet on his tactical display. At its core was Archilax's new flagship, surrounded by nightmarish shapes that could only be the human-Saurian hybrids. "Mick, with me?" Russell growled, striding toward the hangar bay. "We're taking this fight to them personally." Minutes later, Russell's fighter wing screamed out of the launch tubes, diving straight for Archelax's command ship. Point defense lasers lashed out at them, but Russell's pilots were the best humanity had to offer. They jinked and rolled, closing the distance. A storm of missiles and energy weapons pounded the alien vessel. Its organic hull blistered and burned, but still it came on. Russell's sensors screamed a warning. The Saurian ship was powering up some kind of massive energy weapon. "Evasive maneuvers," he shouted, yanking his control stick hard to port. The alien beam lashed out, vaporizing 2 human fighters instantly. Russell's ship shuddered as debris pelted its shields. "Sir, we can't take much more of this," Mick's voice crackled over the comm. His fighter dove straight at the Saurian flagship, engines howling. Point defense fire filled the void around him, but Russell flew on instinct, his targeting computer locked on the alien ship's weak point. A salvo of high-yield warheads streaked from his fighter's wings, punching through the Saurian vessel's wounded hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Archelax's ship detonated in a spectacular antimatter explosion, the fireball engulfing nearby Saurian craft. As the light faded, Russell saw the remaining alien ships drifting aimlessly, their will to fight evaporating with their leader's demise. Human vessels closed in from all sides, guns blazing. "All enemy ships stand down immediately," Admiral Jackson's voice boomed across all frequencies. "Resistance is futile. You will be boarded and your crews taken into custody." Russell watched as the last Saurian vessels surrendered, corralled by human blockade runners. A ragged cheer went up across the fleet as the realization sunk in. They had won. Humanity had survived. But even as the celebration began, Russell's thoughts turned to the surface of Sauria Prime, to the horrors that still lurked in the alien hives, to the human prisoners who needed rescue. He opened a channel to his squadron. "All right, people, good work up here, but we're not done yet. Prep for atmospheric insertion. We've got some unfinished business planetside." Russell's boots hit the deck of the stealth transport with a dull thud. He checked his armor seals one last time as the ship shuddered, emerging from FTL near their first target, a Saurian-controlled mining outpost on Gamma 6. "Mick, status on those network intrusions?" Russell's voice crackled over the comm. "We're in, boss," Mick replied from his position aboard the command ship. "I've got eyes on their security grids. Looks like 3 main holding areas. Sending coordinates now." Russell's HUD lit up with waypoints. He turned to his assembled pathfinders, their faces set with cold focus. "Listen up. We hit fast and hard. Security's minimal, but don't get sloppy. Priority is extracting our people. Questions?" Silence answered him. Good. These were the best of the best. The transport's bay doors hissed open, revealing the barren, rocky landscape of Gamma 6. Russell led the charge, his team fanning out behind him in perfect formation. They moved like ghosts across the rugged terrain, closing in on the first holding pen. A lone Saurian guard barely had time to squawk in alarm before Russell's plasma rifle reduced it to ash. The team stacked up on the entrance, breaching charges at the ready. The door blew inward with a thunderous boom. Russell's enhanced senses took in the scene in an instant, rows of cages filled with haggard human prisoners, their eyes wide with shock and hope. "We're here to get you out," Russell announced, his voice firm and reassuring. "Stay calm and follow our instructions." As his team worked to free the captives, Russell's calm crackled to life. "Sir, we've got a situation in Holding Area 2, reported Lieutenant Vasquez. "You need to see this." Russell double-timed it to the second facility, his gut churning. He found Vasquez standing outside a sealed containment chamber, her face pale beneath her helmet. Vasquez wordlessly gestured to the observation window. Russell peered inside and felt his blood run cold. The chamber was filled with rows of translucent pods, each containing a horrific fusion of human and Saurian features. Misshapen limbs twitched spasmodically, scaled skin merged with patches of human flesh. And the eyes. Russell forced himself to look away from those unblinking alien eyes. "My God," he breathed, "they've gone beyond simple hybrids. This is—" Russell's eyes hardened. "Purge it, all of it. We can't risk any of this getting loose." As Vasquez's team rigged the facility to blow, Russell pushed on to the final holding area. More prisoners were freed, each with harrowing tales of saurian cruelty. Back aboard the stealth transport, Russell debriefed a group of shell-shocked scientists rescued from the saurian labs. They were working on some kind of hive mind technology, one woman explained, her eyes haunted. Trying to create a network of drones linked directly to saurian command structures. We were test subjects for their prototypes. Russell's fists clenched. "We'll make them pay for this, I promise you that." As the transport broke atmosphere, Russell watched Gamma-6 recede into the distance. One small victory, but the war was a long way to go. His willpower hardened as he thought of the horrors they'd uncovered. "Mick," he called over the comm, "plot a course for the next target. We've got a lot more work to do." The ship jumped to FTL, carrying Russell and his team deeper into saurian space, and closer to the truth behind the alien menace that threatened to consume humanity. Russell stood on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes fixed on the swirling molecular dust cloud ahead. The encrypted data from Arcturus 7 burned in his mind, a constant reminder of the threat that still lurked in the shadows. "Admiral Jackson, we need to pursue them," Russell said, his voice firm. "The Saurians are out there regrouping. We can't let them slip away." Admiral Jackson frowned, studying the star charts. "It's uncharted space, Griffin. We'd be flying blind." "With all due respect, sir, we don't have a choice. If we don't finish this now, everything we've fought for could be lost." After hours of debate and planning, Jackson relented. Russell assembled his team, a mix of hardened veterans and brilliant specialists. McDonovan stood at his side, readying the code-breaking algorithms that would be crucial to their mission. Sergeant Hadrax, leader of the Space Marine Exterminators, approached Russell. "Sir, my men are prepped and ready. Those new anti-genetic warheads pack one hell of a punch." Russell nodded grimly. "Good. We'll need every advantage we can get." For months they pushed deeper into the void, following the faintest of trails. The crew grew restless, the endless expanse of space taking its toll. Then, just as hope began to fade, a signal pinged on their long-range scanners. "We've got something," Mick shouted, his fingers flying over the console. "It's faint, but it's there, edge of that dust cloud bearing 227 Mark IV. As they approached the nebula, their probes revealed the true horror of what awaited them. A massive biomechanical construct loomed within the cloud, dwarfing even their largest ships. Before Russell could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. A tide of alien fighters and bioships erupted from the dust cloud, swarming towards them like angry hornets. "All squadrons engage," Russell barked. "Hadrax, get your team ready. We're punching through their defenses." The void erupted in chaos as human and saurian forces clashed. Russell's fighter squadrons met the alien swarms head-on, energy weapons and missiles crisscrossing the battlefield in a deadly light show. "Russell," he shouted over the comm, "I've got it. That thing, it's called the Gene Archer. It's a birthing factory for their worst creations, shapeshifters, telepathic puppets, things that could destroy us all if they get loose." Russell's blood ran cold. "Then we end this now. All ships concentrate fire on these coordinates. Hadrax, you're with me. We're going in." The Space Marine Exterminators' drop pod screamed towards the Gene Archer, punching through its outer defenses. As the doors blew open, Russell and his team found themselves face to face with pulsating horrors beyond imagination. "Push forward," Russell shouted, his plasma rifle spitting death at the writhing masses. "Don't let up." They fought their way deeper into the abomination, Hadrax's exterminators laying down suppressing fire. As Russell planted demolition charges, Saurian Praetorians lunged at them from the shadows, their minds linked in an unholy union. "Watch your six," Hadrax roared, blasting a monstrous hybrid that had nearly gutted one of his men. Outside, human capital ships rained destruction on the Gene Archer, guided by Mick's precise targeting data. Entire chambers of alien monstrosities were vaporized in the barrage. At last they reached the central hub, a nightmarish fusion of organic tissue and alien technology, and there, pulsing with malevolent energy, was the entity itself. "Hand of the line," Russell growled, raising his weapon. But the entity had one last trick up its sleeve. Its dying synapses lashed out, a wave of corrupting energy washing over Russell's team. He watched in horror as some of his own men began to twist and change, their minds subsumed by the alien influence. "Mick," Russell shouted into his comm, "initiate the sequence now!" As the anti-genetic warheads armed themselves, Russell stared down the writhing mass of the entity. In its alien features, he saw the face of every comrade, every innocent life lost in this war. The warheads detonated, and the entity's scream echoed through Russell's mind as it was consumed by unstoppable genetic fire. The gene arches shuddered and began to break apart around them. Stumbling back to their ships, Russell and the survivors watched as the massive construct disintegrated, its pieces scattering into the void. The dust cloud churned and dissipated, revealing empty space where the saurian threat had once lurked. Russell stood on the bridge, his eyes hollow, his body aching. He looked out at the field of debris, all that remained of humanity's greatest enemy. Russell's eyes strained to adjust as the blinding light of the warp gate faded. He found himself sprawled on the cold metal deck of an extraction shuttle, his armor scorched and smoking. The acrid stench of burned flesh and melted polymer filled his nostrils. "Mick," he croaked, pushing himself up on shaky arms. "Hadrax?" Her groan answered him from nearby. Russell crawled towards the sound, finding Mick slumped against a bulkhead. The tech specialist's face was streaked with blood and soot, but his eyes were alert. "We made it," Mick coughed, wincing as he tried to sit up straighter. "But the others—" Russell's gut clenched as he surveyed the shuttle's interior. Only a handful of his team had made it through the gate. No sign of Hadrax or most of the Space Marine exterminators. The shuttle's view screen flickered to life, showing a rapidly receding view of Armageddon. The planet's surface roiled with unchecked genetic fury, vast swathes of terrain twisting and mutating before their eyes. Russell watched in grim silence as continents warped and oceans boiled. The planetary biosphere overburn was consuming everything, just as they'd planned. But the cost— A sudden tremor rocked the shuttle. Russell stumbled to the control panel, fingers flying over the readouts. "Radiation levels are off the charts," he reported. "We need to get clear of the blast radius." As if in response to his words, a blinding flash erupted from Armageddon's core. The view screen automatically dimmed to protect their eyes, but Russell could still see the planet literally tearing itself apart. The shuttle's engines roared to life, joining the ragged remnants of the human fleet as they fled the disintegrating world. Russell gripped the edge of the control panel, his nucleus tightening beneath his gauntlets. Behind them, Armageddon exploded in a cataclysm of unrestrained genetic energy. The shockwave buffeted their ships, alarms blaring as radiation levels spiked. Russell grabbed an emergency patch kit, racing to seal the breach. As he worked, his mind raced. The purifiers were gone, their genocidal plans reduced to cosmic dust. But how many more saurian splinter groups were out there, nursing their hatred and plotting humanity's downfall? He finished sealing the hull breach and returned to the cockpit. Mick had managed to stabilize their trajectory, putting some much-needed distance between them and the expanding debris field that had once been Armageddon. Mick's fingers danced over the console. "We've lost contact with 3 of our support ships. The rest are reporting heavy damage, but they're holding together. No sign of pursuit or any other purifier vessels in the area." Russell nodded, allowing himself a moment of grim satisfaction. They'd accomplished their mission, even if the cost had been higher than he'd ever imagined. "Set course for the nearest friendly outpost," he ordered. "We need to regroup, tend to our wounded, and figure out our next move." As the battered human fleet limped away from the lingering afterglow of Armageddon's destruction, Russell stared out at the star-flecked void. The Saurian threat wasn't over, not by a long shot, but humanity had proven once again that it wouldn't go down without a fight. Russell's boots clanged on the metal deck as he strode through the quarantine airlock. The acrid stench of disinfectant assaulted his nostrils, a constant reminder of the invisible threat that surrounded them. He surveyed the grim faces of his volunteer force, a ragtag group of soldiers, scientists and technicians, all willing to risk everything on this risky move. "Last chance to back out," he announced, his voice muffled by the sealed environment suit. "Once we cross that threshold, there's no turning back." Mick Donovan stepped forward, clutching a case containing vials of the precious inhibitor. "We're with you, Russell, to the bitter end." The airlock cycled open with a hiss, revealing the nightmare that Pyre had become. The once sterile corridors of the research facility were now a twisted labyrinth of organic growth and pulsating flesh. Tendrils of mutated tissue snaked across walls and ceilings, forming grotesque patterns that seemed to shift and writhe in the flickering emergency lights. Russell led the way, his weapon at the ready. The team moved in tight formation, each step careful and measured. As they rounded a corner, they encountered their first group of infected. The creatures that had once been human scientists lurched towards them, their bodies hideously distorted. Limbs sprouted from impossible angles, skin bubbled and stretched over newly formed appendages. One creature's face had split open, revealing a maw lined with jagged bone shards. "Hold your fire," Russell ordered as several soldiers raised their weapons. "Remember, we're here to save them, not kill them." Mick fumbled with the case, extracting a vial of the inhibitor. With practiced precision, he loaded it into a pneumatic injector. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, taking aim at the nearest mutant. The device hissed as it fired, embedding the inhibitor payload into the creature's twisted flesh. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the mutant let out an otherworldly shriek, its body convulsing as the gene-coded antigen began its work. Before their eyes, the grotesque mutations began to recede. Excess limbs shriveled and fell away, while distorted features slowly reverted to something resembling human form. The process was agonizing to watch, but within minutes, a disoriented but recognizably human scientist lay before them. "It works," Mick breathed, his voice filled with equal parts relief and disbelief. They pressed deeper into the facility, repeating the process again and again. Each successful reversal sparked a mixture of hope and dread. Hope that they could save more lives, dread at the sheer scale of the task before them. As they reached the central atrium, the true horror of the xenoblite virus became apparent. The vast chamber had been transformed into a pulsating organic hellscape. Hundreds of infected humans were fused into the very structure of the room, their bodies serving as gruesome building blocks for some alien architecture. Russell steeled himself, fighting back the urge to retch. "Spread out, we need to hit as many infection nodes as possible." The team fanned out, injecting the inhibitor wherever they could reach. The air filled with inhuman screams as the antigen took hold, the massive organic construct shuddering and thrashing as parts of it began to revert. Suddenly an alarm blared through the facility. Mick's eyes widened as he checked a portable scanner. "Russell, the inhibitor. It's triggering a chain reaction. The reversal process is spreading faster than we anticipated." A tremor ran through the floor, nearly knocking them off their feet. Russell grabbed Mick's arm, steadying him. "Is that good or bad?" Mick shook his head, his expression a mixture of excitement and fear. "I don't know, but whatever's happening, it's changing everything." As if to punctuate his words, a section of the organic growth nearest to them began to rapidly dissolve, revealing the sterile metal walls beneath. The process spread outward like wildfire, consuming the mutated tissue and leaving behind hints of the original structure. Russell watched in awe as the nightmare around them began to recede. But even as hope surged within him, a nagging doubt remained. They had triggered something beyond their control, and there was no telling where it might lead. The scorched surface of Pyre stretched before them, a wasteland of twisted metal and charred earth. Russell's boots crunched on the ash-covered ground as he led his team into the heart of the contamination zone. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the horizon. Mick Donovan stepped forward, clutching a case of vials. "We're all in, Russell, to the bitter end." One by one they removed their helmets. The acrid stench of decay assaulted their nostrils. Russell nodded to Mick, who began distributing the syringes filled with the synthesized antiviral inhibitors. Russell's hands shook as he pressed the needle to his neck. He locked eyes with Mick, both men sharing a final moment of humanity. Then, with a collective intake of breath, they plunged the needles home. The effect was instantaneous. Russell's skin erupted in fiery agony, as if his very cells were being ripped apart and reassembled. He fell to his knees, gasping. Through tear-blurred eyes, he watched his flesh bubble and warp. "God, the pain," someone moaned nearby. Russell couldn't tell who. His senses were overwhelmed by his own torment. Tumor-like sacs burst from Russell's arms, pulsating with sickly light. He screamed as his bones cracked and reformed. Every nerve ending felt like it was being seared with a blowtorch. Through the haze of agony, Russell saw Mick convulsing on the ground. His friend's body seemed to liquefy, melting into a mass of writhing protoplasm. Glowing spores erupted from the mass that had once been Mick Donovan, billowing outward in an expanding cloud. Russell tried to call out, but his mouth was no longer his own. His consciousness flickered as his body reshaped itself into something utterly alien. He felt himself dispersing, spreading outward like Mick had. In his last moments of clarity, Russell saw the viral inhibitors taking effect. The infected biomass around them began to wither and crumble. The xenoblight plague that had consumed Pyre was being consumed in turn. As Russell's awareness faded, he caught a final glimpse of the world around him. The scorched plains of Pyre were awash in cleansing fire, purging the last vestiges of the alien contagion. His sacrifice, their sacrifice, had not been in vain. Then there was only ash and blessed oblivion. Admiral Jackson stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the scanners as they swept the surface of Pyre. The readings confirmed what his eyes could see, a world scoured clean of the xenoblight threat. "Sir," his aide reported, "ground teams have recovered, remains from the contamination zone." Jackson turned, his face a mask of grim resignation. "Show me." In the ship's lab, technicians carefully examined a partially fossilized husk. Jackson's breath caught as he recognized the remnants of a human form. "Is it?" The lead scientist nodded. "DNA confirms it, sir. This was Russell Griffin." Jackson placed a hand on the fossilized remains, feeling the rough texture beneath his fingertips. "Have it prepared for transport. This man's sacrifice will be remembered." Later, in his quarters, Jackson began dictating his final report on the Saurian conflict. The words came haltingly at first, then in a steady stream as he recounted the horrors they had faced and the price paid for victory. "The Saurian threat has been neutralized," he spoke into the recorder. "Archelax's Imperium and Zendrax's purifiers are no more. Their genetic weapons have been rendered inert, but at a cost almost too terrible to contemplate." Jackson paused, collecting his thoughts. "Billions dead, entire worlds lost, and yet humanity endures. We have been tested in the crucible of this war and emerged, changed but unbroken." He gazed out the viewport at the stars beyond. "As we begin the long process of rebuilding, we must never forget the lessons learned here, the sacrifices made, the horrors we've witnessed and overcome." Jackson's voice grew firm with conviction. "We are the survivors, the inheritors of this hard-won peace, and we owe it to those who fell to ensure that such nightmares never again threaten our existence." He reached for a glass of water, his hand trembling slightly. "The dead world of Pyre stands as a monument to our resilience, a reminder of how close we came to annihilation, and the price paid for our continued survival." Jackson's eyes fell on a hollow image of Russell Griffin, taken before the final mission. "We are the children of the fire," he said softly, "forged in its flames, tempered by adversity. And we will." You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, Please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.